Alright guys, Jameson and Alex here. Today we are talking about the Path of the Hellfire Barbarian.
Yes.
This one is from DM Stash. They have a new Kickstarter running, so make sure you check that out. We'll have a link down below for that, and more on that later. If you're new to the channel or the series, what we're going to do is go through all the abilities gained in the subclass. We're going to rate the roleplay, combat, and synergy based on how the abilities gained improve on the base class abilities.
Yep.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in our D&D Beyond Sourcebook bundle giveaway. All that being said, let's get right into it.
With this barbarian, the Hellfire Barbarian, we're going to start off with Malefic Rage at level 3. Your rage shapes you into a creature your enemies will never forget. You gain resistance to fire damage while raging. If you already have resistance, you can instead reduce fire damage taken by 1d6 resistances apply. It does specify that. So you're cutting that fire damage down to near naught if in a lot of situations.
Especially at low levels like that.
Early on, it's going to be like no fire damage for you, basically. Also, when you enter your rage, you unleash the infernal power within you. Until your rage ends, you manifest claws, which you can use as weapons if that hand is empty. They deal 1d6 slashing damage on hit. They count as simple weapon for you as well. And you do add your strength modifier to the attack and damage rolls when you make an attack with it as normal.
Also at level 3, we have infernal abilities. You found ways to manifest your dwindling life force into explosive abilities. You gain a pool of d6 infernal dice equal to your barbarian level, and gain one infernal ability of your choice. You gain another ability when you reach 6th level, and again at 10th level. When an ability states expend an infernal dice, you roll that dice and subtract the result from your current hit points as fire damage. You cannot reduce this damage in any way. You can only expend one infernal die per ability usage. The amount increases as you reach higher levels. 5th level, you can do 2 dice, 11th level, 3 dice, and 17th level, 4 dice. Kind of scaling like cantrips do in that way.
Yep.
You regain all expended infernal dice on a short or long rest. So again, with these you get 3 different options. First up is Eruption. With the Roar of Infernal Rage, you unleash a searing blast of flame that engulfs your foes in hellfire. As an action, you can expend infernal dice to create a burst of flame beneath your feet. All creatures within a 15-foot radius centered on you must succeed a dex save against your infernal ability DC, or take 1d10 fire damage per infernal dice spent. And a note for the DC, it is 8 plus your proficiency modifier plus your constitution modifier.
Yeah.
So, not bad as a barbarian.
No.
Strength is your go-to, but con is right there.
Yep.
Also, we have Dreadful Roar, where you can tap into the infernal energy that courses through your veins and let loose a primal roar that echoes with the power of the abyss, causing your enemies to tremble and freeze in fear. As an action, you can expend infernal dice and roar, affecting creatures of your choice, which is important, within a 30-foot radius. For each additional infernal dice spent, the range increases by 30 feet.
That's a very big roar.
Yeah, eventually it'll be 120 foot. That's a big AoE. Creatures must succeed on a wisdom save against your DC or be frightened of you. Creatures frightened in this way have their movement speed reduced to 0 feet until the condition ends, which they can re-roll the save at the end of each of their turns, ending the effect on a success. So it's a great, everyone stay put where you are ability. It is a wisdom save, but that is a huge radius, and you can choose.
And it's creatures of choice, too, which is a big thing. A lot of times you get into area effects that big, it's all creatures, so there's some give and take with it, but this is strictly to creatures of choice, so that big area just feels super juicy.
Right. And then lastly, we have Cataclysmic Leap. You channel the chaotic energy of the abyss, propelling yourself through the air and preparing a devastating strike that leaves your enemies reeling. As a bonus action, you can expend infernal dice and empower yourself. You target a creature you can see within range equal to your movement speed and violently launch yourself at them, landing in a square adjacent to them. The path to them must be straight and unobstructed and at least 5 feet away from you. Until the end of your turn, your next successful melee weapon attack against that creature deals an additional 1d10 fire damage per expended infernal dice. So, 3 options. 1, an AoE fire explosion.
Yep.
2, a massive AoE frighten that immobilizes creatures. And 3, a leap. Will help you get into range. So some great utility options.
A little extra fire damage burst on that leap, too. On top
and you do get access to all of these, and you get to choose the order at which you get them. So
it's not the first time we've heard that. Some of the recent subclass
it's been
reviewed,
coming up.
and I like that. Because if based on what you need or what your party needs or what you've been encountering, you can kind of pick. Okay, well we've been fighting a lot of little stuff that's trying to come clobber me all at once. Maybe I want that burst AOE damage around me early on, or we've been fighting a lot of stuff that's at range and I want to be able to get to them, so I maybe want to leap first. So the fact that you can pick but eventually get all three, I really do like.
Right.
Our next ability is Menacing Presence at level 6. As a bonus action, you can attempt to frighten someone with nothing but the ferocious look in your eyes. Make a contested Charisma Intimidation check against the target's Wisdom Insight check. If the creature cannot see you, you automatically fail the check. So they've got to be able to see you to scare them with your look. I mean, makes sense. If you succeed on the contested check, the target is frightened for 1 minute. They can roll a Wisdom saving throw against a DC 8 plus your Charisma plus your Proficiency bonus at the end of each of their turns, ending the effect on a success. You can use this ability once per short or long rest. And furthermore, you can add your Strength modifier to any intimidation checks you were be doing.
Yes, so one thing you might be thinking right off the bat is, I already have a frightening ability.
You do.
There's a big difference between these. One, with the AoE Frighten, it is loud. You're roaring in a big area.
Yes.
And it's affecting lots of creatures. Whereas this one is specific to an individual, and it's just a look. So it's more discreet, and it can be tied into with intimidation, depending on DM discretion as well. And you get the bonus for that to make sure it sticks the initial. Right. But it's more, this one would be more for RP, where you could use the other AoE Frighten for RP, but
definitely leans more toward the combat side.
Yes.
Next up at level 10, we do have Healed in Hellfire. While you are raging and below half your maximum hit points, you regain hit points equal to your Constitution modifier whenever you successfully land a melee weapon attack or an unarmed strike. This effect can only occur once per turn. So just a way to help keep you alive and kicking once you get underneath half health.
Yeah, and it kind of helps synergize a little bit too with your initial abilities, where you're going to be taking some fire damage. It's never going to be a lot of fire damage, but this is just going to kind of mitigate some of that you at lower levels would maybe care a little bit more about. But before we get on to the Capstone ability, which, I mean, everyone loves capstones, right? And this one's pretty cool. Before we get to that, we're going to give you a little bit more information about the Kickstarter. So with this is a compilation of a lot of things from DM Stash. They specialize a lot in STL mini files, so you can 3D print your own. But that's not all they do. This Kickstarter has 150 plus page sourcebook introducing their lore content of Tharador with factions, religions, races, kingdoms, cities, cultures, and a vast history. It also has 3 massive 5th edition campaign settings with hours of playtime. I believe it's over 800 pages I saw on their Kickstarter. That's a lot of pages for adventures.
800 pages is a lot.
That is a ton. So, that's going to keep you occupied for a long time. I also have 6 new subclasses, a new class, the Psionic, with 3 subclasses, with potentially more depending on stretch goals. You know how these things work. New feats, over 30 of those. A new subrace, the Awakened Human. Colossal race with 3 subraces. The Elemi race with 4 subraces. A revamped critical hit system. That sounds very interesting to me.
It does.
And then we also have maps, side quests, magic items, and more in all the campaigns. 130, as I mentioned, STL files for minis to 3D print. And then virtual tabletop and paper tokens for all of the minis as well, if you don't have a 3D printer. So lots of stuff.
That's me.
In this Kickstarter.
I don't have one of them.
Yeah, no. So make sure you check that out before the Kickstarter ends. Lots of great stuff coming from them.
And it emphasized lots, because that's so much in there. So much. Onto our capstone ability for our Hellfire Barbarian, Infernal Visage. At level 14, your infernal powers reach their peak. While you are raging, you can use your action to transform into your demonic form. In this form, you gain the following benefits. Your size becomes large, and your reach increases by 5 feet. You sprout demonic wings and gain a fly speed of 60 feet. And your melee weapons in attacks include your unarmed and natural weapons, dealing additional 2d6 fire damage on hit. Transformation lasts for 1 minute or until your rage ends, and you can use this ability once per long rest. Feels very, very paladin-like.
Yes,
definitely.
definitely.
Maybe not quite as juiced as a lot of the Paladin capstones, but it is a level 14. You're getting
that's
access
a
to
huge
the
difference.
instead of 20.
Right.
Which, if you're going by XP share, I don't know the exact math. I probably should do this at some point. It wouldn't shock me if it takes more XP to get from 15 to 20 as it does from 1 to 14.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me at all. So, again, you're getting this a lot earlier.
Yes, absolutely.
Not on level number, but as far as, how much XP it would take to get you there.
Right.
And what a Paladin would get their capstone in.
I will say as well, there are free downloads of this and some other content as well from this Kickstarter, so make sure you check that out. We'll have links to that down below as well, so check that out. But yeah, those are all the abilities in the subclass. So let's go over the rating portion of the video. First up is the roleplay asterisk, as always. Talking about roleplay, we're talking about interacting with the world around you, interacting with NPCs, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat, basically things outside the initiative order. Not talking about your class fantasy, history, lore, background. That's on you as a player. Can't rate you, but we can rate the abilities gained in the subclass and how they might improve your potential in those roleplay scenarios.
That's right.
Whew. So, all that being said, there's a few key points with the roleplay, some of which we mentioned a little bit earlier, so I'll keep it short. But fire resistance. You might not initially think that to be much of a roleplay thing, but fire damage is very common, especially in exploration, and dungeon delving. Traps and things will have fire, even natural events, the burning buildings, there's lots of ways fire can come into play.
Even if your campaign plays with extreme temperatures and things, if you're in extreme hot situations, you could even take fire damage and exhaustion, things like that. So
there's some. It may be more on niche, but of all the damage types, it's probably one of the more common that could fall into exploration and that side of things. And having that resistance is going to also help your healers not use as many heals on you, which, you're a barbarian. It's not as big a deal for you.
Yeah.
But that also ties in with another point, which is the level 10 ability for healing. Once you get low, you kind of keep getting this reoccurring healing effect as long as you're hitting and raging, which, as a barbarian, let's be honest, you're pretty good at doing that. So that is nice, and it will help your healers in your party with that. So some indirect for the healing side of things. The bigger RP options are obviously the 2 Frighten options. The AoE has a massive radius eventually, and it can be good just to immobilize things. Maybe you can mitigate combats, run from combats, avoid them altogether, or just, cause a massive scene distraction for your party.
Could you?
Yes.
Could you not?
And of course, too, you have the also low-key version with the one-on-one with intimidation bonuses, which is great. Adding strength to intimidation. Yes, you're a barbarian. Sounds like fun.
Yep.
So I'm not going to be upset about that.
You're going to come close to feeling like a bard or a rogue with their expertise in a certain stat when it comes to scaring people.
Sure.
Barbarians with nice skill check for a change. How about that?
Mm-hmm. And then lastly, the other main thing, besides the capstone, which could be used, but it always feels kind of bad to use a capstone that's a once-a-day thing for RP, especially when it's such a short duration. There is the leap, which could be used as well. Maybe some DM discretion, depending on how the DM allows you to do this.
Because it does specify to target creature.
Right.
So if you could target an ally, maybe.
Yeah, and it just gives you a bonus to the damage on the next time you hit them. But if you don't hit them... That being said, a lot of niche stuff, so we went with a 3 out of 5, but still some good options when they do come up.
The combat side of things, and no surprise, we take a step up in our rating here because A, it's a barbarian, and if you're doing less than 4 in combat and barbarian, you're trying to be different, which can be fine. So starting off, obviously with fire damage, it's the most common, or at least one of the most common elemental damage types, if not the most common. So the fact that you have built-in resistance to it is great. One of my underrated, most favorite things about this is any other class, subclass, when you do this, if you already have something, it gives you an alternative. Because there are a few things to me that feel bad. Like, okay, I get this through some other means. Well, this is wasted because I get it from over here.
Yeah.
Like, that feels bad. So if you already have it, you get to also negate some of that damage by a d6. And it's just like, I do not fear fire in any way. Fire fears me. Basically what you do with this. The other thing with the slashing, claws, essentially, it's another option. Later on when those become, when they get extra fire damage with your capstone thing, you can start just absolutely shredding people for a minute with that because it's extra 2d6 with each hand.
Yeah, right.
That's going to hurt a ton. But most of the time, you're just going to be using them with your regular weapon. But it's an option if you really needed to. Or if you were dipping into like Monk out of this or something.
Sure.
Of course, your big thing's going to be your infernal abilities. You've got 3 different choices. They scale up. You can pick them in order. As we said before, you're going to have, again, as a quick reminder, an explosive AoE 15-foot radius around you. You've got a big, which can be ridiculously large, AoE fear.
120-foot radius.
Yeah, which is the size of like what an ancient dragon would do. And then the leap helps address one of Barbarian's biggest weaknesses in combat, making you more efficient at getting to stuff. You knock something down, and you have to like, well, I can't get there on my turn, especially early on before your unarmored movement starts to kick up more. You can get to stuff better. You're like, chuck the thing. Now I can just run to him. It's like, I'm jumping to you, and here's an extra 1d10 fire damage from my sword, hammer, axe, whatever.
By the way, it is 120 feet for ancient.
Okay, so it's the same.
But you also have the immobilization that comes along with it as well.
They're not running from you. They have to just stand perfectly still, which is even better in my opinion.
As a barbarian, you stay right there. I'm coming to you next.
But you next. You over there, you're third. You're in the hole. We're still waiting for it. Again, all those scale up with the amount of dice you can spend on them, making them more potent as you go. Love that because it lets these abilities carry more, be more potent as you level up, but don't feel so kind of more lackluster at later levels. So they do more damage or they have a bigger area of effect, all that kind of jazz. Your presence thing is going to be pretty much strictly RP. That's really not going to help you in combat much. Heal to Hellfire is great because it helps you just stay alive once you get under half. Again, you can't out-heal damage. Anything that lets you help your other people that do heal keep you alive is great, and it's definitely not busted because anytime I think some people see like passive healing on a character, it's like that's not right, it's too much. It's like, well, you have to be under half health to trigger it. To start and raging, and it is only 1 hit per turn, and then it's your con mod, which before level 20, barring some crazy magical thing, is going to be 5 health per turn. All it's going to be. So great. It's great. It's there.
You might
not
ever get below half health as a barbarian.
Unless you're fighting spellcasters that really want to get rid of you, and it's like Finger of Death, and you're taking some big jump magic damage, you're not ever going to get that low. So. And finally, the capstone, making you bigger, and to me, the reach thing is underappreciated among all that. It's going to get lost in the shuffle of everybody sees flight and sees fire damage. You're like, yes, I was like, don't undervalue that reach thing, because in my head, I'm already imagining like using something with like 10-foot reach to start with. You got extra reach, you just
take your Polar Master Sentinel combo and then extend it. And you're flying as well.
Yeah, just run around it being just a scary bringer of fiery death. All that being said, we went with a 4 out of a possible 5. You do have a couple of things that are only once per day for a minute, like your capstone. The health healing has to trigger once you're under half health, so you'll be taking a lot of damage to get under half health. So that's a couple of things. And the other ones are limited use, but it is D6s. So you've got options to use. You have to spend all of it at once or just one. There's some flexibility there, which we really do like. And you get to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, too, is fire damage is commonly resisted.
Also true.
And there's not really anything to help overcome that. So you're getting all this extra stuff.
That's probably the one thing I would also I would give this subclass is maybe just overcoming resistance. Even if it was just part of the capstone.
Yeah, like when you're in your infernal form or whatever.
Yeah, you can ignore fire resistance, but it's
still very solid when it works for sure. And then speaking of synergy, we have our synergy score, which obviously this is going to address some of the biggest weaknesses of Barbarian, which there aren't many. Biggest weakness is getting to things.
Getting to things. Like the mobility / reach thing. You have plenty of movement speed later on, but you got to get there so you can.
So to be able to leap around like a wild man, to
fear to hold stuff in place so they
can't run away is a big deal.
Yep.
I will mention as well too, if their speed is 0 and something is flying, they fall.
Yeah.
So
you literally
coming.
You can literally ground flying things from 120 foot above you. Like, that's wonderful.
Fantastic. So that's cool. And you get multiple bonuses to your rage, which is your core mechanic as the class Barbarian. Yep. So that is fantastic as well. Extra survivability you're never going to be upset about.
Nope.
More utility with the capstone transformation, as you mentioned. Being able to get to stuff, dealing extra damage. This is being a barbarian.
Heck, even being able to add your strength modifier to intimidation checks, and you got 2 different ways to frighten. So you really just get to lean into being like the scary presence in RP. You're big, you're mean looking, and you will rip somebody in half just by looking at them.
Yes. So all that being said, since we already went over a lot of these things already in more detail, we went with a 4.5 on the synergy. Yes. Very good synergy with it. really taking advantage of the core mechanics of a barbarian and helping shore up some of those weaknesses that keep you held back in some circumstances.
This is correct.
But yeah, that's going to be it for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you know when all of our new videos are coming out. Make sure you check out this Kickstarter.
Yes.
We'll have the links down below, so check that out. As always, thanks for watching.